The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three galaxies, built from white stone that glowed with soft light. Inside, thousands of seats rose up like a giant bowl. Each seat held a representative from a different species. Some had scales, some had fur, some had no bodies at all, and appeared only as floating lights. Today was an important day. The Council was reviewing the military history of every species. This happened once every 100 years. It helped the Council understand which species were dangerous and which were peaceful. It also helped them decide who could join the Inner Circle, a group of the most trusted species in the galaxy. Ambassador Yuna stood at the bottom of the hall, waiting for her turn. She was a human woman with black hair tied back in a simple style. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Beside her sat two other humans. One was Lieutenant Hana, a young woman with sharp eyes and a calm face. The other was Sergeant Tay, an older man with gray at his temples and deep lines on his face. He sat very still, like a statue made of stone. Yuna watched as the Varan Empire presented their military history. The Varans were tall beings with purple skin and 4 arms. Their representative, a male named Cole, spoke with great pride about their conquests. He showed images of massive warships and powerful weapons. The council members nodded with respect. The Varan Empire has fought 12 major wars in the past 10,000 years, Cole announced. We have never lost. Our military technology is among the finest in the galaxy. The council applauded. Cole bowed and returned to his seat, his 4 arms folded across his chest with satisfaction. Next came the Mira Collective, a species of small beings who shared one mind. Then the Orden Republic, whose soldiers were made of living metal. Each presentation was impressive. Each species showed off their weapons, their victories, their power. Finally, the Speaker of the Council, an ancient being named Bren, turned his many eyes toward the human delegation. Earth, he said, his voice echoing through the hall. Please present your military history. Yuna stood up and walked to the center of the floor. She carried a small data tablet. Behind her, Hana and Tay remained seated. Tay had not moved once during the entire meeting. Thank you, Speaker Bren, Yuna said. Her voice was steady but not loud. Earth is honored to present our history to the Council. She pressed a button on her tablet. A holographic display appeared above her head, showing a small, blue planet. Humanity discovered space travel only 300 years ago, Yuna began. Before that, we lived only on our home world. Our military history is different from what you have seen today. She pressed another button. The display changed to show a list of wars. But these were not wars between planets. They were wars between humans, fought on the surface of Earth. These are the major conflicts in human history, Yuna said. The First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Cold War, the Resource Wars, the Unity Wars. Cole leaned forward in his seat, his purple face twisted into a smile. These are wars between yourselves? He asked loudly. You fought your own kind? Yuna nodded. Yes. Before we reached the stars, we had many conflicts among ourselves. Laughter began to spread through the council hall. It started small, just a few chuckles from nearby seats. But it grew quickly. Soon, hundreds of alien delegates were laughing openly at the human presentation. How primitive, someone shouted. They killed each other over land, another voice called out. And resources. They fought over water and oil. Cole stood up, unable to contain himself. Speaker Bren, is this a joke? These humans spent thousands of years killing each other with metal projectiles and chemical explosives. They had not even discovered energy weapons. How can such a barbaric species be considered for the Inner Circle? More laughter filled the hall. Yuna's face remained calm, but her hands tightened on the data tablet. Beside her, Hana's jaw clenched with anger. Only Tay showed no reaction. He sat in his chair like he had not heard anything at all. Bren raised one of his many limbs to quiet the crowd. The laughter slowly died down. Ambassador Yuna, Bren said, the council appreciates your honesty, but Representative Cole raises a valid point. Your species has a history of violence against itself. This is concerning. I understand, Yuna replied. But I would like to point out that humanity has been at peace for over 100 years. We have learned from our past mistakes. Peace built on the bones of your own dead, Cole said with disgust. Tell me, Ambassador, how many humans died in these wars you listed? Yuna paused. The exact number is difficult to calculate, but estimates suggest over 500 million deaths across all conflicts. The hall went silent for a moment. Then the laughter returned, even louder than before. 500 million of your own kind, Cole shouted. And you call yourselves civilized? The Varan Empire has never lost more than 2 million soldiers in any single war. That is because you fight other species, Hana said suddenly, her voice cut through the noise like a blade. You have never faced an enemy who thinks like you, who knows your strategies, who is willing to die rather than surrender. Cole turned his 4 eyes toward her. And who are you to speak? Lieutenant Hana, Earth Defense Force, she replied, and I am simply stating a fact. Human wars were brutal because humans are difficult to defeat. We do not give up easily. Pretty words, Cole said with a wave of his hand. But words do not win wars. Technology wins wars. Power wins wars. What do humans have? Old weapons and a history of failure. Yuna took a deep breath. She had expected this reaction. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had no reputation, no great victories to show. All they had was their bloody past. We have something else, she said quietly. Oh? Cole crossed all 4 arms. And what is that? Yuna looked back at Sergeant Tay. He still had not moved. His eyes were fixed on some distant point that no one else could see. We have survivors, Yuna said. People who lived through every war and learned from every battle. People who carry the memory of our past so that we never repeat it. Cole laughed again. Survivors? Ambassador, the wars you listed span over 300 years. No human lives that long. Your survivors are dead and buried. Yuna smiled slightly. Are they? For the first time, Tay moved. He turned his head slowly and looked directly at Cole. His eyes were dark and deep, like wells that had no bottom. Cole felt something strange. It was a feeling he had not experienced in a very long time. It was fear, but the moment passed quickly. Cole shook his head and laughed again. Enough of this foolishness, he said. Speaker Bren, I move that Earth be denied membership to the Inner Circle. They are too primitive, too violent, and too weak to be trusted with such responsibility. Several other delegates voiced their agreement. Bren looked at the human delegation with what might have been pity. Ambassador Yuna, he said, do you have anything else to add before we vote? Yuna glanced at Tay one more time. He gave her the smallest nod. Only this, she said. Please look carefully at our records before you make your decision. Sometimes, the most important details are the ones that are easy to miss. She returned to her seat. The council prepared to vote, and somewhere in the hall, Cole continued to laugh, not knowing that his laughter would soon turn to silence. Sergeant Tay had seen many things in his life. He had seen cities burn and empires fall. He had seen men become heroes and heroes become dust. He had walked through battlefields covered with the dead and sat in rooms where peace treaties were signed. Nothing surprised him anymore. Not even a room full of aliens laughing at his species. He sat in his chair and listened to their mockery. Their voices washed over him like wind over stone. He had heard such laughter before. Many times. In many different languages. Enemies always laughed before they understood. It was the way of things. Lieutenant Hana sat beside him, her hands pressed flat against her knees to stop them from shaking. She was young, only 32 years old, and this was her first time off Earth. The council hall amazed her when they first arrived. Now it only made her angry. How can they laugh? She whispered to Tay. They know nothing about us. Tay did not answer immediately. He watched Cole, the Varan representative, wave his forearms as he spoke to his friends. They were all smiling, pointing at the human delegation, sharing jokes that Tay could not hear but could easily guess. "Let them laugh," Tay finally said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel being crushed. "Laughter dies quickly when truth arrives." Hana looked at him. She had worked with Tay for 3 years, but she still did not fully understand him. He rarely spoke. He never smiled. He moved through life like a ghost, present but somehow distant from everything around him. "Sir," she said carefully, "may I ask you something personal?" Tay turned his head slightly toward her. "You may ask. The records show that you served in the Unity Wars. That was 90 years ago. But you look like you are only 50 years old." She paused. "How is that possible?" Tay was silent for a long moment. Around them, the council continued its business. Other species were presenting their cases for membership in the inner circle. But Tay seemed to be somewhere else entirely, lost in memories that Hana could not see. "The Unity Wars," he said slowly. "Yes, I remember them well. The fighting in the Pacific Islands, the siege of New Seoul, the final battle at Geneva." He closed his eyes. "I was there for all of it. But that would make you over 100 years old," Hana said. 112, Tay replied. "Though I stopped counting long ago." 1. Hana stared at him. She had read his file before this mission. It said he was 53 years old, born in Busan, Korea. Enlisted in the Earth Defense Force at age 18. Nothing in the file suggested anything unusual. "I do not understand," she admitted. Tay opened his eyes. "You will. Soon enough, everyone will understand." Ambassador Yuna returned to her seat beside them. Her face was tired but determined. The vote had been postponed until the next day, giving Earth one more chance to make their case. "That could have gone better," she said quietly. "It went as expected," Tay replied. "They see us as primitives, children playing with fire. They do not understand what fire can do." Yuna nodded. She had known Tay longer than anyone else in the delegation. He had been her mentor when she first joined the diplomatic corps, though he had never explained why a soldier would teach a diplomat. "The speaker agreed to let us present additional evidence tomorrow," Yuna said. "But I do not know what else we can show them. They have already seen our history." "They have seen the wars," Tay said. "They have not seen the warriors." Hana frowned. "What do you mean?" Before Tay could answer, a shadow fell over them. Cole stood before the human delegation, his purple skin gleaming under the hall's lights. 2 other Varans stood behind him, their arms crossed in identical poses. "Ambassador Yuna," Cole said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "I wanted to offer my apologies. We did not mean to laugh at your presentation. It was simply surprising." Yuna stood to face him. She was much shorter than the Varan, but she did not back away. "Thank you for your concern, Representative Cole, but no apology is needed." Good. Cole's eyes moved to Tay. "And who is this? I noticed he did not speak during your presentation. Is he unable to talk?" Tay looked up at the Varan slowly. "I can talk." "Ah, wonderful." Cole clapped 2 of his hands together. "Then tell me, Sergeant, what is your role here? Are you a bodyguard? A servant?" "I am a soldier," Tay said simply. "A soldier," Cole laughed. "How exciting. Tell me, have you ever been in a real battle? Not these primitive wars your kind fought among yourselves, but a real battle against another species?" Tay considered the question. "I have fought in many battles." "Many battles," Cole repeated with amusement. "Against whom? Other humans with pointed sticks?" The Varans behind Cole laughed. Hana's face turned red with anger, but Yuna placed a hand on her arm to keep her calm. Tay did not react. He simply looked at Cole with those deep, dark eyes. "I have fought against humans, yes," Tay said. "I have also fought against machines, against nature, against time itself. I have fought in trenches filled with mud and poison gas. I have fought in cities where every building was a fortress. I have fought in jungles where death hid behind every leaf. I have fought on mountains so high that the air itself became an enemy. Cole's smile faded slightly. There was something in the human's voice that disturbed him. A weight, a gravity, that did not match his simple appearance. Pretty stories, Cole said, though his voice was less confident now. But stories do not impress the council. I do not tell stories, Tay replied. I tell history. My history. Your history? Cole laughed again, but it sounded forced. Sergeant, the wars in your species' records span 300 years. You cannot possibly have been part of all of them. Tay stood up slowly. He was not as tall as Cole, but somehow he seemed larger. His presence filled the space around him, like darkness fills a room when the light goes out. Representative Cole, Tay said. How old do you think I am? Cole studied the human's face. 50, 60 of your years? Your kind does not live long. Look at the records again, Tay said. Look at the list of survivors from each war. Look at the names. Cole frowned. What do you mean? Every war has survivors, Tay continued. Every battle has those who walk away. Look at the names of those survivors throughout human history. Look carefully. Something in Tay's tone made Cole uncomfortable. He tried to maintain his smile, but it was becoming difficult. I have better things to do than read human records, Cole said dismissively. Then you will miss the truth, Tay replied. And when you discover it tomorrow, you will wish you had listened today. He sat back down, his face returning to its usual stillness. The conversation was over. Cole stood there for a moment, uncertain what to do. The human had challenged him without raising his voice or making a threat. It was strange, unsettling. Come, he said to his companions. We have wasted enough time with these primitives. They walked away, but Cole could not shake the feeling that he had missed something important. Something dangerous. Hana watched them go. Sir, what did you mean? What is in the records? Tay did not answer. He simply stared ahead, his eyes fixed on that distant point that only he could see. Yuna sat down beside him. Are you sure about this? Once they know the truth, there is no going back. There was never any going back, Tay said quietly. There is only forward. That is the lesson humanity learned long ago. We cannot change the past. We can only survive it. The council hall began to empty as delegates returned to their quarters. Tomorrow would bring the final presentations and the vote. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what made humanity different from every other species. And tomorrow, Cole would finally understand why the old soldier's eyes held so much darkness. Because those eyes had seen 300 years of war. 300 years of death. 300 years of humanity at its worst and its best. And they were still open. Still watching. Still waiting for the next battle to begin. The next morning came slowly. Counselor Bren floated in his private chamber, his many eyes closed in what his species called rest. But he could not truly rest. Something about the human presentation troubled him, something he could not name. He had been a member of the council for over 2,000 years. He had seen species rise and fall. He had watched empires crumble and new civilizations take their place. Very little surprised him anymore. But the humans were different. There was something about them that did not fit. He opened his eyes and activated a holographic display. The human military records appeared before him, glowing with soft blue light. He had dismissed them yesterday, like everyone else. Primitive wars, primitive weapons, nothing worthy of attention. But the old human soldier had told Cole to look again, to look at the names. Bren began to scroll through the records. The First World War, millions dead, cities destroyed. New weapons that killed in terrible ways. The records listed many names: soldiers, generals, medics, survivors. He scanned through them quickly, not sure what he was looking for. Then he moved to the Second World War. Even more death. Even more destruction. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. Again, Thousands of names filled the records. Again, Bren scrolled through them. He stopped. A name caught his attention. It appeared in the survivor lists from a battle in Korea during the war that followed the Second World War. The name was simple. Tae. Private Tae. Bren frowned. That was the name of the human soldier in the council hall. Surely it was a coincidence. The Korean War was over 270 years ago. No human lived that long. He continued scrolling. The Resource Wars. The First Space Conflict. The Unity Wars. In each war, buried among thousands of other names, he found it. Tae. Sometimes Private Tae, sometimes Corporal Tae, sometimes Sergeant Tae, but always the same man. Bren felt a cold sensation spread through his body. It was a feeling he had not experienced in centuries. He checked the records again. He cross-referenced identification numbers, physical descriptions, genetic markers. Everything matched. The same human had served in every major war in Earth's history for the past 300 years. That was impossible. Bren activated his communication device. Speaker's office. Connect me to the human delegation immediately. There was a moment of silence. Then a human voice answered. This is Ambassador Yuna. How may I help you? Speaker Bren. Ambassador, Bren said carefully. I have been reviewing your military records. I have some questions about one of your delegates. The one called Tae. There was a pause on the other end. When Yuna spoke again, her voice was calm but guarded. What would you like to know, Speaker? How old is he? Another pause. According to his official records, Sergeant Tae is 53 years old. And according to unofficial records, silence. Ambassador Yuna, Bren continued. I have found his name in every war listed in your history. Every single one. The same identification markers. The same genetic code. How is this possible? Yuna sighed. Perhaps we should discuss this in person, Speaker. Some things are difficult to explain over communication channels. Bren agreed. He ended the call and floated toward the door of his chamber. The council meeting would begin in 2 hours. Before then, he needed answers. He found the human delegation in a small room near the main hall. Yuna and Hana were sitting at a table, reviewing documents. Tae stood by the window, looking out at the stars. He did not turn when Bren entered. Speaker Bren, Yuna said, standing up. Thank you for meeting with us. Thank me after you explain, Bren replied. His many eyes focused on Tae's back. Is it true? Has this man really lived for over 300 years? Yuna glanced at Tae. He still did not move. It is true, she said quietly. Bren moved closer to the human soldier. How? Your species does not have such technology. You have only been in space for 3 centuries. Even the most advanced species can only extend life by a factor of 2 or 3. Tae finally spoke. It is not technology. Bren circled around to face him. The human's eyes were the same as before. Dark, deep, and impossibly old. Now Bren understood why they disturbed him so much. Those were not the eyes of a 50-year-old man. They were the eyes of someone who had seen things that no living being should ever see. Then what is it? Bren asked. Tae was quiet for a moment. Then he began to speak, his voice low and steady. In the early days of human warfare, we discovered something strange. Some soldiers did not die. They were wounded, sometimes terribly, but they always recovered. Bullets passed through them, explosions threw them into the air, fires burned their skin. But they survived. A mutation? Bren suggested. We do not know what it is, Tae admitted. Scientists have studied us for decades. They cannot explain it. Our cells regenerate faster than normal. Our bodies heal wounds that should be fatal. We age, but slowly. Very slowly. Us, Bren's eyes widened. There are others like you? Tae nodded. Not many. Perhaps a few hundred in all of human history. We call ourselves the returned. We die on the battlefield. But we come back. Always. Hana spoke up. The military keeps records of all returned soldiers. They are assigned to the most dangerous missions, the ones where survival is unlikely. Because for them, survival is always guaranteed. Bren processed this information. It changed everything he thought he knew about humanity. "Why did you not reveal this yesterday?" he asked. "Because you would not have believed us," Yuna said. "You needed to discover the truth yourself. That way, you could verify it with your own methods." She was right. If the humans had simply claimed to have immortal soldiers, the council would have laughed even harder. But now Bren had seen the evidence with his own eyes. The records did not lie. "The wars you listed," Bren said slowly. "Sergeant Tay fought in all of them? Every single one?" Tay confirmed. "I was 17 when I first died. A shell exploded next to me during a battle near Pusan. I woke up 3 days later in a field hospital. Completely healed. The doctors thought it was a miracle. They did not know it was only the beginning." "You died?" Bren asked. "Many times." Tay's face showed no emotion. "In the Second World War, I died 4 times. In the Unity Wars, I died 12 times. Each death taught me something new. Each resurrection made me stronger." Bren floated in silence, trying to understand what he was hearing. A soldier who could not truly die. A warrior who carried 3 centuries of combat experience. It was terrifying. "The other returned," Bren said. "Where are they now?" Tay's expression changed slightly. A shadow passed over his face. "Most are still on Earth. Some serve in the military. Some have retired to quiet lives. A few," he paused, "a few have chosen to stop returning." "Stop returning?" "Even immortality grows heavy, Speaker. Some of us decided that 300 years of war was enough. They found ways to make their deaths permanent." Tay looked back at the stars. "I thought about joining them once, but I could not leave my people unprotected." Bren understood now why the humans had seemed so strange. They were not primitives pretending to be civilized. They were survivors of a kind of violence that no other species had ever experienced, and their greatest warriors were still alive, still watching, still waiting. "Representative Cole insulted you yesterday," Bren said. "He called your people barbaric." "He was not wrong," Tay replied. "We have been barbaric. We have killed millions of our own kind. We have committed terrible acts in the name of nation and pride and fear. But we have also learned from our barbarism. Every war taught us something. Every death made us wiser." He turned to face Bren directly. "The Varan Empire has never lost a war because they have never faced a true enemy. They conquer species weaker than themselves and call it glory. But humanity has been its own enemy for thousands of years. We know what real war looks like. We know what it costs. And we have soldiers who remember every moment of it." Bren was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. "I will inform the council of what I have learned, but I cannot promise how they will react." "We do not ask for promises," Yuna said. "We only ask for a fair hearing." Bren nodded slowly. Then he turned and floated toward the door. Before he left, he looked back at Tay one more time. "Sergeant," he said, "how many times have you died in total?" Tay thought for a moment. 47 times. Though I stopped counting after the Unity Wars." Bren left without another word. He had much to think about. And in 2 hours, the council would learn that humanity was far more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. The council hall was full when Bren returned to his seat. Every delegate had come to witness the final presentations and the vote. They expected entertainment. They expected to watch the primitive humans fail one more time. They did not expect what was about to happen. Cole sat in his usual place, surrounded by his Varan companions. He was laughing at something one of them had said, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. He had not bothered to review the human records last night. Why would he? The humans were beneath his notice. Their rejection was already certain. Bren floated to the center of the hall. His many eyes swept across the assembled delegates. "The council will now hear additional evidence from the human delegation," he announced. His voice carried through the hall, silencing all conversation. "Before we proceed, I have information to share with the Council. Information that changes our understanding of humanity significantly. Cole rolled his eyes. Speaker Bren, must we waste more time on this? We have already seen their barbaric history. What more is there to discuss? Representative Cole, Bren said calmly. I suggest you listen carefully. What I am about to reveal concerns you directly. Cole frowned but said nothing. Around the hall, delegates leaned forward in their seats. Something in Bren's tone suggested that this would not be a typical presentation. Last night, I reviewed the human military records in detail, Bren began. I found something that I initially believed to be an error. A name that appeared in the survivor lists of every war in human history. The same name, IM said, and APB in War, with matching identification markers and genetic profiles. Spanning over 300 years, murmurs spread through the hall. Delegates looked at each other with confusion. I contacted the human delegation for an explanation, Bren continued. What they told me defies everything we know about biology and mortality. He paused for effect. Humanity has discovered, or perhaps created, a form of immortality. The hall exploded with noise. Delegates shouted questions. Some laughed in disbelief. Others demanded proof. Call stood up. His purple face twisted with anger. Impossible, he shouted. The humans cannot even build proper starships. How could they create immortality? Bren raised a limb for silence. I did not say they created it. I said they discovered it. And they did not discover a technology. They discovered that some humans simply cannot die. He turned toward the human delegation. Sergeant Tay, please come forward. Tay stood slowly and walked to the center of the hall. Every eye in the room followed him. He moved like a man who had nowhere to rush to, because he had all the time in the universe. Sergeant Tay, Bren said, please tell the council your age. Tay faced the assembled delegates. I am 312 years old. The noise in the hall grew louder. Cole laughed bitterly. This is absurd. He is lying. I do not lie. Tay said simply. I have never found a reason to. When you have lived as long as I have, lies become meaningless. Then explain yourself, Cole demanded. How can a primitive human live for 300 years? Tay looked at him calmly. I do not know the science behind it. Smarter people than me have tried to understand it. But I can tell you what I experience. When I am wounded badly enough to kill a normal human, I die. My heart stops. My brain goes dark. And then, hours or days later, I wake up, completely healed, as if nothing happened. You expect us to believe this? Cole sneered. I expect nothing, Tay replied. But I can prove it. If the council wishes. The hall fell silent. Cole stared at the human with disbelief. Prove it? How? Tay reached into his uniform and pulled out a small knife. It was a simple blade, nothing special. He held it up so everyone could see. I have died 47 times in my life. Once more will not make a difference. Before anyone could react, Tay drew the blade across his own throat. Blood sprayed from the wound, dark and red. He collapsed to the floor, the knife falling from his hand. His eyes stared at the ceiling, empty and lifeless. Chaos erupted in the hall. Delegates screamed. Some fled toward the exits. Hana rushed forward. But Yuna held her back. Wait, Yuna said. Just wait. Cole stared at the body on the floor. He killed himself. Why would he kill himself? Because he knew he would not stay dead, Yuna replied. Her voice was steady, though her hands were shaking. Give it a few minutes. The minutes passed like hours. The blood on the floor stopped spreading. Tay's body lay motionless. Surrounded by a circle of horrified aliens, Bren floated closer, his many eyes fixed on the human's face. Then Tay's fingers twitched. The wound on his throat began to close. The torn flesh pulled itself together, the blood flowing back into his body like water running uphill. Color returned to his skin. His chest began to rise and fall. Tay's eyes blinked open. He sat up slowly, touching his throat where the wound had been. There was no mark, no scar, nothing to show that he had been dead moments before. He stood up and faced the council. "Now you understand," he said. "Humanity does not have immortal soldiers because we built them. We have immortal soldiers because war created us. Centuries of killing each other, century after century. And some of us simply refused to stay dead." The hall was absolutely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Cole's purple face had turned pale. He stared at Tay like he was seeing a ghost. In a way, he was. "How many?" Cole whispered. "How many of you are there?" "We do not share that information," Yuna said, stepping forward. "But I can tell you that the returned have served in every war humanity has ever fought. They carry the memories of every battle, every strategy, every victory and defeat. They are our greatest military asset. And our greatest warning," Tay added. "We know what war truly costs. We have paid that price many times over. That is why humanity seeks peace, not because we are weak, but because we understand the alternative better than any other species in the galaxy." Cole found his voice again, though it was weaker than before. You brought him here to threaten us?" "No," Yuna said firmly. "We brought him here to show you the truth. Humanity is not seeking power or conquest. We have had enough of both. We want to join the Council as partners, not as rulers. But we will not be dismissed as primitives." She looked around the hall at the stunned delegates. Every species here has conquered others through technology or numbers or resources. But humanity conquered itself. We fought our own worst impulses for thousands of years. We are still fighting them. The returned are living proof of that struggle. Bren finally spoke. "Ambassador Yuna, the Council needs time to process this information. I propose we delay the vote until tomorrow." "We agree," Yuna said. "Take all the time you need. The truth will be the same tomorrow as it is today." She turned and walked back to her seat. Hana followed, still pale from watching Tay die. Tay himself remained standing in the center of the hall for a moment longer. He looked directly at Cole. "You asked yesterday what humans have," Tay said. "We have memory. We remember every mistake, every tragedy, every death. We carry that weight so that future generations do not have to. That is our power. That is our curse. And that is why we will never be easy to defeat." He walked back to his seat without another word. The council hall slowly emptied as delegates retreated to discuss what they had witnessed. Cole remained in his seat, staring at the spot where Tay had died and risen again. For the first time in his long military career, Representative Cole of the Varan Empire felt small. He had conquered planets. He had destroyed fleets. He had won every battle he ever fought. But he had never faced an enemy who could not die. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that humanity's wars against themselves were just practice, preparation for something bigger, something that the galaxy was not ready to understand. The laughter from yesterday felt very far away now. The night passed slowly on the council station. In every corner, delegates gathered in small groups to discuss what they had witnessed. The story spread quickly. A human soldier who could not die, immortal warriors who remembered centuries of war, a species that had spent thousands of years learning how to kill itself. By morning, the entire station knew the truth about humanity. Cole did not sleep that night. He sat in his quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing human military records. He had spent hours going through them, searching for weaknesses, searching for lies. He found nothing. The records were real. The names matched. The evidence was undeniable. Sergeant Tay had fought in every major war in human history. He had died 47 times. And he was still alive. Still serving, still carrying the weight of 300 years of bloodshed. Cole had laughed at the humans. He had called them primitive. He had mocked their history of fighting among themselves. Now he understood how foolish that laughter was. He remembered his own military training. The Varan Academy taught that victory came from superior firepower and advanced technology. An enemy could only fight as long as their weapons lasted. Once their shields fell and their ships burned, they surrendered. That was how war worked. But what if an enemy could not be stopped? What if they kept coming back, no matter how many times you killed them? What if they remembered every defeat and learned from every death? Cole shuddered. He had never faced such an enemy. No one in the Varan Empire had. Their conquests had always been quick and clean. They overwhelmed their targets with superior numbers and watched them fall. The humans would not fall. They would get back up. Morning came, and the council hall filled once again. The mood was different today. The laughter was gone. Delegates spoke in hushed voices. Glancing at the human delegation with a mix of fear and respect, Tay sat in his usual place, as still as ever. The wound on his throat had healed completely. There was no evidence that he had died yesterday. Just another death to add to the count, just another memory to carry forward. Hana sat beside him. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had barely slept either. Watching Tay die had been harder than she expected. Even knowing he would return, seeing his body fall to the floor had shaken her deeply. "Sir," she whispered, "how do you do it? How do you keep going after dying so many times?" Tay was quiet for a moment. "The first death was the hardest. I did not understand what was happening. I thought I had gone to heaven. And then I woke up in a field hospital covered in mud and blood." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "The nurse who found me fainted. She thought I was a demon. But after the first time, after you knew what you were?" Tay turned to look at her. "Every death teaches you something, Lieutenant. The first death taught me that I was different. The second death taught me that I was alone. The 10th death taught me that loneliness does not kill. The 20th death taught me that nothing kills. Not really." He looked back at the council hall. After a while, death becomes familiar. Like an old friend who visits too often. You stop fearing it. You stop fighting it. You simply accept it as part of who you are. He paused. "The real challenge is not dying. The real challenge is remembering why you want to live." Speaker Bren floated to the center of the hall. The murmuring stopped immediately. "The council will now reconvene," Bren announced. "We have discussed the evidence presented by the human delegation. We have verified the claims regarding the returned soldiers. We have consulted with our scientific advisors." He paused, his many eyes sweeping across the assembled delegates. "Before we proceed to the vote, Representative Cole of the Varan Empire has requested permission to speak." Everyone turned to look at Cole. The Varan stood slowly, his forearms hanging at his sides. He looked tired, old, defeated. He walked to the center of the hall and faced the human delegation. "Ambassador Yuna," he said. His voice was quiet, nothing like the boastful tone he had used yesterday. "I owe you and your people an apology." Yuna's eyebrows rose slightly, but she said nothing. "Yesterday, I laughed at your history. I called your species primitive and barbaric. I believed that your wars against yourselves were a sign of weakness." Cole lowered his head. "I was wrong." The hall was completely silent. "The Varan Empire has never lost a war," Cole continued. "I was proud of that record. I believed it proved our superiority. But now I understand the truth. We have never lost because we have never faced a real challenge. We conquered species who could not fight back. We claimed victory over enemies who were already broken." He turned to face Tay directly. "You have fought for 300 years. You have died 47 times. You have watched your own people kill each other in numbers that my mind cannot comprehend. And yet here you stand. Unbroken, unchanged, ready to fight again if necessary." Tay met his gaze without speaking. "I do not know if I could survive what you have survived," Cole admitted. "I do not know if any Varan could. Your species has endured trials that would have destroyed mine. And you have emerged stronger for it." He turned back to the council. "I withdraw my objection to human membership in the inner circle. More than that, I support their admission. Humanity has proven that they understand war better than any of us. They have earned their place among us. He returned to his seat without another word. The other Veron delegates looked at him with shock, but none of them challenged his statement. Bren nodded slowly. "Thank you, Representative Cole. Your words will be noted in the official record." He turned to the human delegation. "Ambassador Yuna, do you have any final statements before the vote?" Yuna stood and walked to the center of the hall. She looked around at the assembled delegates, meeting as many eyes as she could. "Thank you, Speaker Bren. And thank you, Representative Cole, for your words." She took a deep breath. "Humanity did not come here seeking power or fear. We came seeking understanding. We wanted you to know who we truly are, not who you assumed us to be." She gestured toward Tay. "Sergeant Tay represents the best and worst of humanity. He has witnessed our greatest failures and our greatest triumphs. He carries the memory of every soldier who fought beside him and every enemy who fell before him. He is a living reminder of what war costs and what peace means." She faced the council directly. "We do not ask you to trust us immediately. Trust must be earned. But we ask you to give us the chance to earn it. We have spent 3 centuries reaching for the stars. We have left our wars behind us. We want to build something new with the species of this galaxy. Something better than what came before." She returned to her seat. The hall remained silent for a long moment. Then Bren spoke. "The council will now vote on the admission of Earth to the inner circle." The voting proceeded quickly. Species after species cast their decisions. When it was finished, Bren tallied the results. "The vote is complete," he announced. "By a margin of 73%, Earth is admitted to the inner circle of the Galactic Council." Applause filled the hall. It was not the mocking laughter of yesterday. It was genuine respect, earned through truth and sacrifice. Yuna smiled for the first time since arriving at the council station. Hana's eyes filled with tears. Even Tay's expression softened slightly. Later that evening, the human delegation prepared to return to their ship. Tomorrow, they would begin the long journey back to Earth. Carrying news of their success, Bren approached them before they left. "Sergeant Tay," he said, "I have a question. You do not have to answer it." Tay nodded. "Ask. After 300 years of war, why do you still serve? You could retire. You could disappear. Why do you continue?" Tay thought about the question for a long time. "Because someone must remember," he finally said. "The soldiers who died in the First World War are forgotten by everyone except the history books. The generals of the Unity Wars are just names on monuments. But I remember them. I remember their faces, their voices, their last words." He looked out at the stars visible through the station's windows. "If I stop, that memory dies. And if the memory dies, we might repeat the same mistakes again. So I keep going. I keep serving. I keep remembering." He turned back to Bren. "That is my duty. That is my curse. And that is my gift to humanity." Bren was silent for a moment. Then he bowed, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. "May your memory never fade, Sergeant. And may your people find the peace they seek." Tay returned the bow. Then he walked toward the ship, carrying 300 years of history on his shoulders. The laughter was gone now. In its place was something far more powerful: understanding. And somewhere in the galaxy, the other species would tell stories about the humans and their immortal soldiers. Stories about a species that had conquered death itself. Stories about warriors who could not be stopped, could not be killed, could not be forgotten. Stories about the survivors of every war. Stories that would never be laughed at again.